It's a magical, magical cycle.
We live in a culture that basically says, PMS, premenstrual cycle, period, and what you need to look out for. If the cycles are not even, then you need to go to the doctor, get on medication to fix that up. If you're having moods, that's terrible, let's stay away from you, and call you all these sorts of names. So where my experience has not shown me that. My meditation sittings during the time that I'm on my period, I sit and I'm connected in such a profound, powerful way. So I know that I've had to turn to Native American teachings to actually find the tidbits, the truth, the wisdom that resonates with my own experience. But can you speak a little bit more about that and how you have seen it?
Yes. Again, it's opposite world. Everything you've been taught is the opposite of how it really is. So it is the premenstrual time just before your period, when the veil between the worlds of the seen and unseen is the thinnest. And now, various tribes were different, but in the ones that were supportive of women, there's some on the in California coast where their visions in the Moon Lodge would be used to guide the tribe. So absolutely, you're more porous. What's coming in is often very, very profound. Then when you begin to grow another egg, the follicular phase for ovulation and estrogen rises and so on, then you're in a more outgoing mode where you're preparing a new birth. Then there's ovulation, FSH, LH surge, testosterone surges, sexual libido is at its peak, but so is what I call the desire for cross-pollination from all ideas and so on. And then if you don't get pregnant, then you go into more of a cocoon kind of thing. So, you're preparing to give birth to someone or something outside of yourself in the follicular phase. Then if you don't get pregnant, you're preparing to give birth to yourself. And that's what perimenopause and menopause is. If you miss that opportunity for all of those times to give birth to yourself, then your hormones are going to support turning inward, and you'll become so full of rage at yourself and everyone else if you haven't done that work. My daughter Kate has a whole business called Do Less. It's called Origin, and their entire thing with daily planning and all of that is to use the lunar cycle and the menstrual cycle as a business tool for maximizing your business. It's very, very exciting. And so it's a magical cycle where you realize that it follows the waxing and waning of the moon, which, and the moon phases were originally used for agriculture. And so your body and the flow of fluids in the body and the flow of emotions is all connected with the lunar cycle. And when you align with that, you become fertile and abundant in the way nature is, not in the way our culture is, which is if you have a corporation, then your quarterly earnings have to be greater and greater and greater, to tell the shareholders the earnings are up, the earnings are up. It's never like that. Fields need to lie fallow. Women need a time when they are lying fallow, when they're not producing. But we've all been enculturated, brainwashed into endless productivity. So you're afraid to sleep in. Oh, you're lazy. I mean, I have to say, in my family of origin, I have a mother whose joy was 5 sports a day and, rise and shine and, all of the rest of it, because that's who she is as a Sagittarius. That's just who she is. It is exactly not who I am at all. So it took me years to not set an alarm and not feel guilty if I sleep for 12 hours, because that is my body's reset. It isn't everybody's, but it is for most people, at least 8 to 10 hours. That's what the great apes need. And we ought to be able to do as well as that. Also, Albert Einstein needed 10 hours a night. So, that lunar cycle, it's also a cycle of creativity. You have little girls and you can begin to teach them about creativity and just have them look at the cycles of the moon. It's also interesting that it's at the full moon when all kinds of creatures in the ocean come to the surface to mate. And in Italy, they harvest calamari according to the phases of the moon. So there's so much earth wisdom connected with the moon. And when a woman aligns with that, there's so much power. In general, the dark of the moon, when they say it's always darkest before dawn, the dark of the moon is 4 a.m. And that's when most women actually begin their bleeding. And if we're living together, then women, of course, cycle at the same time, and that's from pheromones. And so there's so much, what I'm finding now that I love in the younger generations